Hi, everybody. This is Chris,
This is Matt.
and this is
Adam,
Adam. Hi, Adam.
hello.
For those of you expecting our normal show, we're kind of throwing a little curve at everyone and doing a nice surprise with Adam here. Adam has recently finished Realms of Antiquity, and following our rule, the game's 20 years old or the system is. And this system was, what system did you make this on, Adam?
The TI 99 4A.
I gotta start. Why the TI 99 4A?
Well, it was my first computer. If I can go into a bit of the history there.
Sure.
It was actually a birthday present for my brother in 1984. And my dad, who had worked with teletype machines and in the army when he was stationed in West Germany, he actually worked with cryptographers and whatnot. So he had a real respect for computers, and he really wanted to get us one. And so he went to the local Jafco, which was like a catalog store like Sears here in the Pacific Northwest. And they had like TIs. It was like $150 for the console with a $100 mail-in rebate. He was like, whoa, what a deal. Oh, and if you buy like 2 games, you get 1 free. If you buy 4 games, you get 2 free. And it's like, oh my God, this is a great deal. Needless to say, the salesman isn't mentioning. By the way, TI actually canceled the whole home computer at the end of last year. So,
So you came to TI-99 late in its life then, right?
yeah, basically, technically, after it had already been canceled. Although my understanding was they sold so many consoles afterwards that they almost considered getting back into it when they realized how many consoles they'd sold. Which was an impressive number, nowhere near a Commodore 64, but that, they're the kings.
Hard to be Commodore.
Trammell had it in for Texas Instruments. There was
Yes,
nothing
he
they were
did.
going to do. Yeah. He held a grudge from the calculators they beat him out of. And
Yeah. I was amused when someone posted about my game and initially thought it was on a TI calculator. No, it was on a home computer. He's like, really? They had a home computer?
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And I was going to make a joke about you coming into it late in its life. I think you could have got it at launch and it's late in its life. It was so fast
Yeah.
in and out.
yeah, we essentially found out after we got it. My brother, who was never really happy about that, he wanted a color computer from Radio Shack because a good friend of his had one. And once we found out that like all of the computer stuff started disappearing from stores and Radio Shack was really the only constant that you could find it at, that he ended up getting his color computer, although now I have it. It's actually downstairs.
Nice.
Because he's like, take all the vintage stuff. I don't want it. So,
Wow.
Okay.
but where was I going with that? So we basically, initially it was just like a toy, like we didn't really do a lot with it. Now we did have, because we mailed in and got the rebate and we got a free speech synthesizer by mailing in 6 manual UPCs, we started getting the Triton Catalog, which was a mail order catalog
Wow.
that actually still sold software for the TI. And then a friend of ours introduced us to the TexComp catalog. These guys actually got the license. The Texas Instruments made them their licensed repair facility after they didn't want to do it anymore. And then I even found later in a magazine shop, I found a 10X catalog.
Wow.
Wow. I miss
So-
catalog. Did
Sorry,
you did you program on the TI-99 when you first got it, or did you come into that later?
I did. It took me a little bit. I read through the basic book. I started typing in basic programs. My brother was always more into tabletop gaming, like Dungeons and Dragons. But one of the things every kid tries to do is write like a character generator or in a basic. So we did a lot of little playing around like that. We didn't really have any. We didn't do anything too serious, because it was really difficult to get into any kind of higher level languages or lower level languages, as the case may be, on the TI without the full expansion system, which I did get for my own birthday in '87 because there was a computer store in Mount Vernon that actually had he was a TI guy, and he actually had like the peripheral expansion system, which is this big 20-pound steel box. Apparently, TI was really worried about small arms fire and grenade fragmentation in the home. So, if you ever have seen any TI computers, man, they are rugged.
Yeah.
I actually only had my original console die last year. That it had ran from 1981 to 2019 without fail.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they've really built rugged to last, which is kind of nice, which is a relief nowadays. I mean, you ask anyone, like, can you get the original Commodore 64, the original pre-bread box model? It's like, no, they're all dead.
Mm-hmm.
They were built from such cheap components that they didn't last.
Yeah. All right. I jumped us off track right away. I had said that one of the things I like to do on the show is let's do a pitch here. This is a great game. Okay. I've got it starting up here. If someone wanted to get this game, where would they go?
They can go to my website at quixotic.adamantier.com. They can also find it on Arcade Shopper, which is a retro computer store based out of Oregon. It's another fellow 99er, runs a good store, and of course he has the business license and all that mucky stuff I don't want to deal with. So he basically has it. He has it up on his shop. He has both the digital edition, and he is taking the pre-orders for the collector's edition.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Which is in a beautiful game box. I have found a board game maker that does beautiful work, very expensive, to create the boxes, which is why I'm doing pre-orders, because I don't really want to order more than I can afford. With every box, you will get a very nice printed manual. Mm-hmm. Maybe not on faux leather like Ultima, but I'll be honest, I don't even know if you can get those done anymore in small print.
I don't know. Even the Nox one, it's still just a manual. It's not that faux leather.
Yeah. I tried. Literally, I would have to have brought the Ultima 4 books to a printer around here, and they'd probably look at it and go like, yeah, you can't, no, unless you're getting 2,000 or 10,000 of those, there's no way. We got the reference card.
Nice.
And then we have the cloth map, which I didn't think I was going to be able to do until a friend of mine helped me find a good source to get maps printed.
So beautiful.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm. And then the edging is done by a professional seamstress known as Mom.
Aw.
Yeah, she was happy to help. She does quilting, so she she's literally telling me all you need is like a cutting board like this, and then a fabric stretcher, and then a basting edge. And I'm like, why don't maybe you should help me and just do these for me.
Why don't you just show me a few thousand times? It'll be fine.
So, and then there will be physical media for those crazy enough to want it. Thankfully, my old floppy drives still work, but you can get floppy disks if you want. Only 5 1/4 because I don't have a 3.5-inch drive that'll work with a TI.
No.
This is the one that a lot of guys really want, which is the custom cartridge. I actually was spending today burning EPROMs with the latest version of the software.
Is it hard to get the cartridges? Is it hard to find someplace to source media that's that old?
Well, in this case, this comes from a very good friend of mine in the 99er community, Jim Fetzner. He actually builds custom cartridge boards that you can just plug an EPROM chip into to drive your software. So I have a bunch of them that I've been basically prepping. The cartridge shells are old TI carts. I just tear out the old boards and replace them. But you can see here.
Wow.
Nice. This just fits right into a standard TI cartridge shell.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Little pricey. They're priced to afford, and to be honest, they're not terribly practical. Since if I have to update a version, these are now out of version. But they're also reprogrammable if that's the case. So I pretty much tell anyone if you're really really wanting the new version, you can send it back to me, and I'll replace it. But
I'm
hoping that will be necessary.
As strange as it sounds as like a collector, I often like the version that hasn't been updated. The one that's still kind of wonky in the first pass. So I have a feeling you might get a lot of people who are like, no, we're fine. Like, if we want to do that, we'll get the soft, we'll get the...
less work for me. So. But no one would ever be turned away on it. And and a lot of 99ers, they use a product called the Final Grom, which is essentially a cartridge with a built-in SD card loader. And you can just put your ROM binaries on that, plug it in, and you can just replace and reuse as needed. And that's like easily doable with even with the digital edition. In fact, someone with a TI could just copy everything, just buy the digital edition and be able to run it on the actual hardware.
No copy protection.
No, I don't. Unlike Apple programmers, I don't have time to figure out the most horrible fashion to store data on disk to make it unreadable.
Shots fired! Shots fired! So there's two more things I want to point people at before we go. I would definitely want to come back to the 99er community, so don't let me lose that. But this isn't your only game.
No, I've done a few others. A lot of them are kind of... This was the first major project. Essentially, went through childhood, eventually packed the TI away in the basement, went to college, got jobs, then decided I need to go back to school and get my computer science degree because it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So we'll go back to school in the early 2000s, and all of a sudden, all these old programmer instincts come back. They've been buried for years. So I actually get my TI out of storage, find somebody to help me replace the keyboard because their later generation keyboards were crap that deteriorate really fast. But I was actually able to get it back up and running. And then I actually worked at getting all my old software transferred over and stuff. But I realized now I actually have the skills to do things that I couldn't. And when I was a kid, there was 4 assembly books for the TI, and none of them were particularly useful. And there was no resources to learn at all. Whereas now with the internet, it was easy to find. In fact, the greatest TI resource they're called the tech pages. Guy basically literally just lays out all of the architecture of every single chip, the entire assembly code and everything. It's like a huge, enormously useful super reference. So that was a really useful tool. And then there was a Yahoo mailing group, which now has actually finally been shut down because Yahoo shut down all the mailing groups. There was a mail group so that you could actually talk to people and get information and stuff. So that really helped spur it on. It was around this time I also discovered the Classic 99 emulator, which besides being a very good emulator of the TI, is not like other emulators in that the owner, the creator, Mike Brent, went to Texas Instruments and got permission to include the ROMs.
Nice.
That's huge.
Which is... It's not like with MAME where you have to go download them off a pirate site somewhere. Mm-hmm. So
I always wondered that about that emulator. I'm like, how has this not been addressed? Because I feel like Texas Instruments is still around and charging $500 for their calculators. So
yeah, he apparently found someone who was cool with understood what it meant to sign the license and was cool with it. Cool.
So that's the other question. Say someone wants to get into this again. Where would they go to kind of start joining that community?
Right now, one of our most popular places is we have a forums on Atari Age.
Okay.
In fact, it's probably one of the busiest forums on Atari Age besides the Atari forums themselves. Occasionally, some 99ers like to brag, "Oh, we're even more than Commodore." It's like, yeah, the Commodore guys have their own forum sites. Several of them. We're not even close.
That doesn't mean what you think it means.
With Commodore, a lot of 99ers have kind of unfairly extended a bit of antipathy towards Commodore owners because of Trammell. So.
Mm-hmm. I I can understand that. That is understandable. So how did you other than what we just did, how did you promote this game? How did you help people find out about it?
Well, a couple things was I realized I wanted to promote it beyond just TI guys, because TI guys are elderly and generally not huge gamers. Most TI guys that I've worked with, who are very brilliant guys, they actually like working on platforms. They like working on utilities and platforms for things. Like, there's a big community that loves the Forth language, and they developed like new versions of Forth and all that. But yeah, for gaming, it's like, they like throwing together a game once in a while, but it's not a huge deal. For me, this was like a personal project, because it starts, as with everything, with Ultima. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it was like I would see magazine ads for Ultima, and it was just, oh, look at that game, it's so pretty, and they're talking about exploring and doing stuff, and it sounds so awesome, and why can't I play it? It's like on the TI, the closest thing I had was Legends, which was a late release in 87, 88. It's essentially a clone of Fantasy reproduced in TI Extended Basic with some machine language help. And it's okay. The CRPG Addict actually played it through and gave it a pretty decent rating, all things considered. But not anywhere near what Ultima is. I mean, this is like no more complex than Ultima 1.
Right.
A little less so in some ways. So... And then, like, my mom and dad, who really didn't get it, they would be, oh, we'll get you a subscription to Compute Magazine in, like, 86, 87. It's like, that doesn't... Oh, great. Look at all these games I can't work. Look at these computers I can't afford. Like, I don't think people realize just how, in the video game crash of 83, in that era before the modern PC era, a lot, especially in middle America, middle class America, they thought computers were a fad. They thought they were a toy. They did not take them seriously. And most of them were like, oh, well, the fad's over. Like computers, whoever thought those would go anywhere? No, I don't want my kid learning computers. It's useless. It's a waste of time. Like, literally, I get to junior high school, they cancel every computer class because nobody thinks they're important anymore. So,
so
it was like a... Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's this push in the 1980, late 70s. There's going to be a computer in every house. Then by 85, no, there's not.
Yeah. The only computers in houses were in boxes in closets, basically. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously that did not turn out to be true, but I think that's why you're seeing this huge surge. I'm sure you guys saw the New York Times article about the resurgence of retro computing in the last several years, and a large part of it is because the guys that basically put the computers in their closet are grown up now and they want to play with their computers again. Yeah. So, and I think that's why a game like Realms of Antiquity still has great relevance now.
Well, especially the scale. And I think that's the thing that struck me at first. Like, I expected Tunnels of Doom sort of at best, because that's my imagination of the TI. TI was one of my first computers I got to play with, but it was at my friend's house. I didn't get a lot of experience with it. So I didn't have much hope. And then I'm like, it just kept building and building to something really on a scale any retro computer system would have been proud to have on it. My question is, that said, was there anything that didn't make it in? Was there anything you wish you could have done?
There were a couple features I had to cut, not because at one point, basically at one point in development, I gave up trying to squeeze it into the original memory system and used a better one. Mm-hmm. And once I did that, many problems went away. But there's still memory constraints in the sense that you don't want the binary to get too large, or when you're coding in modules, you run out of room in one module and you're like, I don't want to have to rearrange things. So So at one point, I had an idea to have like an item vault in the game, which is not something. It's something you see in other CRPGs where you could store stuff in a vault so you can come back and retrieve it later. I had that on paper, and I was definitely going to do it. And then when I actually got to the point where things had to start getting cut out because I was eating up too much memory in the module, I was like, it's a nice to have, but I don't need it. It might actually be better to have the players have that constraint that they can't just shove items off into a vault when they don't need it.
Right.
So that had to get go. The other thing was when I expanded I originally had intended it to only have characters you created, and but after I'd expanded memory, I was like, I'm going to have both. I'm going to have it so you can actually invite characters to join your party as well as create them. So you can essentially do it either way. And the only challenge with that was, well, then what if they want to remove players from their group afterwards? And there are technical reasons why that's not in there, and there are narrative reasons why that is not in there. But I've actually been asked by one customer, it's like, it'd be really nice if I could change the party makeup, like leave party members at the guild or pick them back up. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that. Sorry.
It's okay to know when to say no. It's any good developer knows when to sorry, this is not your.
But I did. I had certain, limitations of how much I could have of certain things here and there, and fortunately, everything kind of worked out that I didn't ever run into a case where I ran out of things. I actually ended up even removing, I used to have more spells, and I actually ended up cutting down the number of spells.
Wow. I actually need to step away for 1 second.
Okay.
I'm really sorry.
No.
I'll be right back.
All right. While he's gone, we'll just keep going here.
All right.
The question I always like asking any developer, because as someone who programs myself, there's a lot of things you do that the users aren't going to see. So what's a coding trick or something you did for this that you're really proud of that you hope people either notice or wouldn't be able to?
Well, the big one I always liked was, the game all started with the line of sight algorithm from Ultima, because I loved the line of sight algorithm, and I tried as a kid in the 80s to recreate it just with pretty much no knowledge whatsoever, and failed utterly. And then actually when I was doing my computer courses, I actually found online someone actually had the raw code, the raw algorithm from Ultima 3. So I was actually able to see it, and it was like, oh, yeah, wow, they're actually calculating every single square and mapping back to the center.
Yeah.
And that's pretty bad. So I was able to actually implement it in assembly language and see it working, and it was really awesome. Then I realized it was really, really bad in the sense that it blocked the line of sight so badly.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point I noticed Ultima 4 on the PC was better. Like it didn't seem to block as much. And it turned out it has a completely different algorithm where it essentially traces from the center, from the cardinal directions from your guy first. Then it does the diagonals, and it uses the guide rail of whether or not things are blocked to determine whether or not how much they're blocking out. And that's how you can have the one square blocking you, but you just see a straight line behind it, but it leaves the rest of it open rather than a big jaggy blocking section.
Big V's because there's a tree.
Yeah, so I was able to implement that one, and it looks pretty good. But then I actually ended up making the line of sight algorithm even more complicated by doing light, which actually uses an inner map of circles with numbers, and it just checks the light level against your radius and does a subtraction, and then it's able to make the circle bigger or smaller based on the strength of your light source. and then it even like reduces it as your torchlight runs out too. So that's a pretty neat effect. But then I went to elevation, where at the elevation level, if you basically have something below you, it cancels out all line of sight blocking except light. But if something's above you, it treats it as an opaque block that blocks all of your line of sight. So that way, that's how you're able to get the effect of I can climb up on like a hillside and look out over a forest and actually see stuff. A good effect for that, of course, is in the highlands. I'm sure you've already explored that, because you can walk up on the hills and then you can see with. And I really like that effect, but it was very interesting. That routine got so complicated. And one of the ways I fixed, like, one of the ways, like, well, how did you do it? It's like, oh, I totally went for the memory over time cheat, which is every single map has its own separate byte map, and then it just layers them all together to produce the finished result. So
I'm glad you mentioned the elevation thing, because that was something when I was playing. I went through an area and then had to stop and went, wait a minute. And I went back and like checked again, and I'm like, he's got elevation in here. Yep. And I can't count the number of games that have done that. I don't think there's that many. There's, I can't think of any that have a proper elevation like that from that era. So, well, very well done, and I hope people pay attention to that, because it's really cool.
Thank you.
How did building the world kind of happen? Like, it sounds like you were really motivated by building with this technology. How did you decide what the world was going to be like, and what the actual gameplay systems were going to be like?
Well, a lot of it was there's two factors. There's the game content itself, which was, I had certain ideas that, like, much like, George Lucas basically wrote down some raw ideas for his movies, and then he would later flesh them out. I always had some basic ideas for how I wanted things to go, because I thought, like, I want a CRPG that has everything imaginable. That was like, it has to have every kind of terrain. It has to have like ice, fire, deserts, ocean, jungles. Like, we got to have a little bit of everything. So it does end up being a little bit of, you kind of want, if you start, peeling back the layers, going like, how is a temperate era next to a desert? It's like, shut up! You're not supposed to be paying attention to that.
It's in there, right?
So there was that, and the game engine was born out of a couple different ideas. A big game influence was Avernum. I really, really enjoy the Avernum series a lot. Every Spiderweb Software, he's actually here in Seattle. Okay. So I'm always amused by the fact he's a Mac guy, and he always makes sure he turns out his games on Macs first. Good, that's awesome. Right, give the Mac guys something to jeer at the PC guys about. But Avernum, I really enjoyed the basic gameplay of it. I liked how you could create your characters and you could assign skill points and make, and it was a much more open-ended kind of design system for the classes. And I especially loved how he loves scattering all these little nooks and crannies and hidden treasures and little encounters off in the middle of nowhere that have nothing to do with the main quest, but they just make it seem much more like a living world. And I really wanted to capture that. Like some ideas, for example, that I ended up abandoning. At one point, I was like, I'm not going to have an experience system. I'm not going to have levels. You're just going to like have skill points that you get. And I'm literally going to have at the bottom of dungeons a milestone, like a literal stone that you touch, and it gives you skill points so that you're getting explored for actually doing things and going places. I eventually decided that was just too hokey. And I also realized that there was a certain degree of, you can get really experimental, but if you go too far off the beaten path from a Dungeons and Dragons type style, people start going like, it's not really enjoyable. And I noticed when I was like replaying like Ultima 4 and stuff, I was like, wow, kind of fun to level up. It's kind of fun to see your character get gradually stronger. Maybe I don't need to, maybe I should give this some more thought before that. And it helped because the game took so long to develop that I went through like 5 major revisions of the game engine. So
that was going to be my next question. You did this for 15 years.
yes.
How did you stay motivated to do it and not give up?
Well, a big part of it was all little steps. Like first, right after I finished my college degree is when in 2005, I was like, I need to do something new on the TI. Up to that point, I'd like converted like basic programs to assembly by hand, and they're so much faster now. And I started doing a conversion of Eastern Front from the Atari home computers.
Okay.
For the TI, I actually got permission from Chris Crawford to do it. He
Nice.
said, "You have my permission for this rather chaotic quest," which is where I took the company name from. But I was like, it's no fun doing somebody else's game. I want to do my own. I really want to do one that's all mine.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely still influenced. Tunnels of Doom is, as you can tell, a big influence on the combat engine.
Yeah, the Tunnels of Doom influence is definitely there, but the way you've polished it and added to it is there's a maturity to it that Tunnels of Doom didn't have, if that makes sense.
No, thank you. Yes, like Kevin Kinney, who was the creator of Tunnels of Doom, I frankly admire his work. If you've ever read about how he designed the game, he literally was kind of left unto his own devices, and he kept just adding and adding to it, and next thing he knew, he'd actually gotten to the maximum number of ROM chips they could put in the cartridge.
That's fantastic, because that game was a big influence on me to get into gaming very early on, that Tunnels of Doom. So
yeah,
got to thank him for that.
And so basically I like started with like, I'm going to do the line of sight. Oh, cool. I tried doing the big map, which I actually know how you could do it a little better now, but I was trying to do a map like Ultima where you had like the big 256 tile by 256 tile size, all in one giant file. And it was like so bad on the actual TI. Like it loaded so slowly. And part of it was because the way I was doing it was wrong. Like there's better ways to store data on a disk. But even no matter what, I realized this is never going to work. Like when I play like Ultima on like the Commodore 64, it's like, oh, it's so awkward. And like, why can't they stop the music before they do a disk access? It's like just bad programming. So, but what I realized was having big maps that you have to keep loading new sections of isn't really sustainable on a retro system. Not without like a hard disk or something where it's quick and fast. So I was like, I'll do small maps, maximum size 4K. I'll do small maps, self-contained. They'll either have exits along the edge, or they'll have exits within the map themselves, and then you'll just move to different maps. So even though the game world looks like one big world, it's actually just a whole bunch of smaller maps stitched together.
You did a good job of hiding that, I want to say. As I moved from region to region, I can definitely sometimes see seams, not always.
Yeah.
But it was never jarring. It never felt weird or out of place.
Yeah. And because I did that, I had a couple other things I did with that. One is like you have both the mirror edge and the repeating edge. So like some maps, they actually just repeat the tiles along the edge indefinitely. You can kind of spot that, but it's not so jarring. The mirror edge lets me actually have mirror maps where literally the maps are continuous. And sometimes I'll do a trick where the map starts here and then it actually goes off the edge but goes up, so that it actually is more, it looks like this in your head, but it's actually this in memory.
Right.
So, and some neat little tricks with that. And then I also did slanted maps, where I just did an offset, so it actually took a square map and does it as a diagonal. And that let me do more natural coastlines for some of the maps without wasting a bunch of tile space.
That should have been in your mention of cool tricks, because that's pretty smart. I like that.
Debugging that is a pain, but
you kind of answered how you got your title name.
I did mention the subtitle.
Yeah.
So obviously, I came up with the title Realms of Antiquity at one point because I wanted a grand name that also kind of referenced the fact it was a retro game, but also a role-playing game, so that worked. The subtitle, The Shattered Crown, does fit the narrative, but it's also because I thought of it right after I managed to shatter a crown on Super Bowl Sunday when my Seahawks lost.
Oh, no.
So, I was like, damn it. Oh, wait. There's a name here.
What about the name of your company?
Quixotic Software comes, of course, from the book Don Quixote, who, if you're not familiar with it, it's a story about a Spanish nobleman, lower class nobleman, who loses his mind after reading a whole bunch of fantasy novels about chivalry and decides to go riding off into the wilds as a knight, and he calls himself Don Quixote. And his only companion is a servant who's basically a lazy slob who follows him around on his mule. So, and of course, the most famous story concerning him is when he sees giant windmills and decides they're giants and tries to attack them, only for his lance to get stuck in one of the fan blades and he gets pulled up off his horse and dumped to the ground. But of course, to him, the giant just dealt him a nasty blow.
Right.
So,
Did you feel like the? Oh, I'm getting some echo here. Did you feel like the difficulty was a motivating factor for you to keep going?
I think so. It was that once I got started, it was like I have to finish. I can't not get it done unless there's a reason it can't get done. And that was probably what really dragged it out, is that the TI, even with the best expansion system possible, only has 32K of CPU RAM, 16K of video RAM, and a 256-byte scratch pad in the console. That's actually literally the only CPU memory in the console. The long story short, the TI was originally a horrible amalgamation of a console game console and a home computer, and marketing's like, let's just merge the two and use all the same tech, and your budget's, by the way, it's cut 10%. Good luck with that. So
that sounds about right for management.
Yeah. So trying to squeeze the game in 32K was starting to get to be a problem. At one point, I actually started using what we call in the TI community a super cart, which adds another 8 kilobytes in the cartridge space, which I thought, well, maybe with another 8K, I think I have just enough to finish it. But as I was going along, I got like the travel engine done. I got a lot of the other components done. I was going to like put all the character creation and intro off into their own program, so I wasn't worried about that. Everything, like tons of data was offset the disk so there was only accessed when needed. But the combat engine was proving to be a real challenge to implement. And I was never really happy with it because I could only have one enemy on the screen at a time. And it didn't look great because it was all like single colors. Like you can actually see it on some old YouTube videos I posted way back. And it just didn't look right, and it was discouraging me. And I just started moving slower and slower on it, just because it's just not exciting. It's like it doesn't look that great. And then when I actually tried to port it over to an actual TI to run, that's when I found out like the disk accesses were just killing it left and right. And so that started it was like because of that, and then personal life stuff coming in once in a while, like I just kept dropping, picking it back up, dropping again, picking it back up. Inevitably I would like, I'm just going to redesign this whole system, and it's not a great pattern. But what really did it was, once I decided there was essentially there was a system. It's existed for the TI since the early 90s. It was actually backwards developed from the TI 99-8, which was a prototype that TI was going to announce at the December computer thing, whatever, I forget what the big event is that they do.
Yeah.
They were going to announce it there, and they decided to back out of the home computer market instead. So they just boxed it up and took it back. There's like about 1,000 of the consoles, though, survived that engineers took home with them. So one guy studied it because it could actually have like up to a megabyte of memory. And he was like, how did they do that? And so he looked, he was like, oh, it's no different than the 4A. They just used like a paging memory system that they introduced into the addressing space. So a group of guys figured out how to reverse engineer that, and they created what they called the SAMS card, or AMS, actually, Advanced Memory System. The SAMS card that I have is actually developed by a user group. They refined the design and then released it for public use. So pretty much everybody follows the same pattern when they build the card. That way they all align with each other. And pretty much because it's that old, every emulator supports it. Like every emulator built-in support for it, even MAME. So
Nice.
So the result is that it was consistent. I could depend on it being around. And once I actually figured out how to use it, I realized this could change everything. This could actually allow me to make the game the way I really wanted to make it. And so that's when I did a complete switch over and recoded everything into like modules instead of like a big long linear block. And once I started doing that, it just flew by. I mean, effectively, it took me about 3.5 years once I actually got the right stuff.
Mm-mm.
Which is basically what I would tell anyone who wants to write retro games is know your platform and don't like know the limitations of it and be ready for that. Like a large part of it is I didn't know how much space things would take up. I didn't know how much space assembly language takes up.
Mm-hmm.
It's surprisingly tight, but when you start adding new features, you'll just see that eaten away really fast for anything really complex. So,
yeah, the memory spaces back then were not a lot to work with. What did you use to code this?
I actually coded it in Classic 99. I used I used a PC compiler. It's called A99. It was actually written on the Amiga back in the late 80s. But it's been carried forward and ported to C. And so I actually had a version of it that a guy gave to me. And it works pretty well it compiles the TI object code. I actually ended up writing my own stuff in C# to convert the object code into binary. And then I wrote code to just copy it into files. One of the advantages of Classic 99 is that it actually mimics the TI file system on the PC. So you literally have 1-to-1 ratios with the files.
Nice.
Which is really nice. And so by that, so then I just use text editor. I like TextPad in particular. I use like a syntax highlighter, so it will highlight all the stuff in my assembly code the way I like it. Mm-hmm. And then, so I type everything up in TextPad, and then I run like some batch files that just execute A99 against all of the requisite blocks. Then it copies and pastes all the binary into my stuff, and then I can literally just turn and burn and start running stuff in Classic 99 to make sure it worked.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yep, and then I carried that philosophy over with content generation as well. I actually wrote tools to take like files that contain like, these are the mobs that exist on this map, these are all the transactions, take all this data and create all of the binary files that to drive it, so that I can essentially click one button and generate all the content.
Would you say that combat situation was your biggest roadblock?
Yes, there were two. There was actually in early versions I had planned to do static maps. I would just have like a set of maps that would load from disk or memory to use. But I realized at one point that with the sheer number of different terrains and everything, there wasn't a lot of variety that way. And then I also like Tunnels of Doom was great in that it actually did create little sections that mimicked the 3D corridor you were in. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that's kind of a backward step if I don't do something. So that was actually one of the big things, and it was actually after I moved to the advanced memory system. I was like, now I have the memory to do this right. I can actually randomly generate combat maps. I just need a logic to do it. Mm-hmm. So I essentially have in memory like these huge blocks of, for grass tiles, you load these two patterns. These patterns are permissible. You can walk on them and do a random scatter in the whole space of this many patterns. In fact, I was also able to refine my random number generator as a result because it was doing so much random generating between in such a tight amount of time that I realized my current one wasn't random enough because it was relying on the video clock, which is on 1/60th of a second intervals. So I had to go to another internal clock that's going in like nanosecond speed to actually have it randomize effectively.
How much help or how much work did you do with the TI-99 community, and what's that community like? It sounds like it's pretty close-knit.
Yeah, it's a close-knit bunch. We actually we've been getting together for Zoom calls weekly as a group. Like anyone can jump in, from the TI community. Did have to password it because it had some fun incidents, and with Zoom, that's always gotta protect your meeting areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a real close-knit group. They've always been really useful. They've been pretty much, if you have programming questions, someone will be there to answer your questions. Pretty drama light as a group, not too much. Like I had more drama on the Yahoo Mail group than I ever had at Atari Age, and I think part of that is because the guys on Atari Age actually do like games more.
Right.
Like, kind of the guys more interested in doing games showed up there. That said, they still have plenty of other side projects they like working on.
Did you do all the artwork yourself?
Yes, I actually did draw a lot of the artwork. Drawing the monsters was fun. I actually tried to make sure that part of it was I was inspired by the old MSX games. The MSX actually shares the same video chip with the TI, at least the MSX1 does. MSX2 and onwards actually have a Yamaha chip that's based on, from what I understand, I think it's what TI intended to produce for like 80 column systems, but because it follows the same pattern of design. But what I noticed playing old MSX games was, well, that's cool. Why do they have that mix of color there? That's weird. And I realized, what they're doing is they're mixing luminosity and color because the color palette's so limited. There's only 15 colors, but on old NTSC displays, the darkness of a color actually factors in as well. Like, and plus, if you have two light colors next to each other, they don't actually show up very well. Like white and gray. Gray is really just an off-white on the TI. So if you try to use gray, it doesn't look right because it's too bright. So what you actually want to use is like light blue, or which is still it's a darker tone, and against like another color, it actually it'll have a little bit of that gray look to it. Mm-hmm. So when I started experimenting with it, I was like, I can actually do some neat artistic stuff with this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, when I tried to do retro art, I'm like, well, the Commodore has 16 colors, but no, it doesn't, because you can't put some next to each other. They just... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do enjoy the fact the TI at its best. This is a mode. It's called it's called either half bitmap or enhanced graphics mode. It essentially takes the bitmap mode of TI, which allows you to have two colors in every row of 1x8 pixels. Mm-hmm. Now, the mode originally was intended, if you do full bitmap, you have to burn almost the entire video chip just to render the screen, because it takes 12K just to do the screen the screen graphics and screen colors, which for some, because of the way they implemented it, they're actually in two separate data tables in memory. So you have patterns in one and colors in the other.
Mm-hmm.
Which this is why you can't do bit blitting on the TI very well at all, unless you do it in monochrome. But enhanced graphics mode basically says don't do 3 tables, just do one. I just want one table. So essentially, you just end up with one table that has rich color. So
very cool. Any advice for people who'd want to get into retro development?
Well, like I said before, it would be definitely a case of you get to know the platform really well. You need to know exactly what it's capable of. If it's important to you to run it on the original hardware, like that was my quest, and it thrills me to no end to be able to fire this up on my original TI. But like, if that's not as important to you, consider doing a retro-like instead. Like, looks retro but isn't. You know, like technically, it's really just a modern Windows game. Just because the tools will be better and you can still have fun with it.
So, would you do it again? I mean, would you do this knowing what you know now?
Yeah, absolutely. To forestall the next question, I'm not sure if I'll do a sequel. I definitely left it open-ended in game that there could be one, but I do want to do some other things on the TI that I haven't had a chance to do because I've been like, no, focus, get this done. Don't move on to other things yet.
You don't want to spend another 15 years.
Exactly. Like it would be.
What was your computing journey like after the TI 99? What computers did you have after that?
Pretty much went to DOS Windows PC in the early 90s. Obviously, I played on my brother's color computer a bit too. Ironically, he actually ended up buying another TI because he needed better word processing and spreadsheet software, and the color computer didn't have it. Where TI actually has pretty good working utilities. So, but yes, I've pretty much been a PC guy ever since. PC Windows.
Are there any games like from back then you feel deserve more attention? Something we might have forgotten to time.
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think. I mean, there was like the TI had a lot better games that, I mean, heck, guys are discovering now that Europe was where all the really amazing innovations were happening. There was like one game on cassette that has sprites in TI Basic. And it's like, how did he do that? That's impossible. And it's that he literally uses a trick with the cassette recorder to play a header file that allows him to write data to the sprite table and set it up. And then in the basic program, he's able to use call char to change the sprite attributes. And it's because they locked that off so bad because they didn't want anyone screwing with sprites. And it's like, that's amazing. I can't believe someone figured out how to do that.
That's really cool.
I noticed on your website, you mentioned that the TI-99 was featured in different strokes. I thought that was a delightful find. Do you still watch Different Strokes?
No, I haven't seen it in a while. But I do remember the day it was like watching an episode. I was like, whoa, Arnold has a TI.
Yeah, it's like when you see your car in a movie.
Like, in fact, I think someone even mentioned that pretty much every computer you see on on a TV in the 80s, where are the cables? There are no cables. Like, they're completely hiding the rat's nest because that is not photogenic.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no one wants to see that. I missed this question early in. How long should it take someone to complete this game on average, do you think?
I didn't know that myself for a while. I know it's very long, obviously, because I spent a lot of time designing content. And I did have... It's actually a very careful balance point. Games like, for example, Deathlord have way too much map and not enough content to justify it.
Yes.
So
Love the game, but can't deny that.
So my goal was to try to keep it tight. I was like, okay, well, four major area, it was originally 180K discs and like 64K of maps on each disc, and however much content that's in there. And it's like every map needs to have something interesting on it. It can't just be like wasted space. The thing I hated the worst in old games was you'd go off and they'd have all these crinkly edges and peninsulas and islands, and none of it had anything. It was a complete waste of your time to visit.
Yep. One thing I noticed was that the interface for this game is really intuitive. Like you just walk into people to talk to them, and it feels like it knows what I want to do without making me hit a bunch of, verb keys on my keyboard. Was that an intentional choice, or was that kind of a limitation of options with what you could do with the TI?
It was more choice. I actually, and I can thank my playtesters for a lot of good feedback. Like originally, I was using a lot of what you'd call TI keys. Like, for example, on the TI, they have a key called the back function, which was function 9, which meant you literally press the function button and the letter 9 to make it happen. And on Classic 99, that was like Alt 9. Mm-hmm. And I pretty much had people like, what's with the crazy keys? Like those don't make sense. And I was like, yeah, no, I can't. I'm going to need to do this for... I have to aim this at modern players, not TIers. Because if you're playing on an old console, it makes perfect sense. Like, someone even asked, why is ESDX the arrow keys? It's like, because that's what they are on the TI.
Yep.
But
yeah.
So when I went through, I changed all the keys to keys that actually were logically made sense. And when I did have to do something special, I don't want you to hit by accident. I used control for the secondary rather than function. So yeah, a lot of it was, I really listened carefully to feedback from testers. If they say something is awkward or weird, it's like, okay, let's smooth that out. Like, I think at one point, one of them was like, well, if I press this key and then it's like my instinct is to press this other key. And that always cancels out. And I was like, okay, I need to make it so that it's not a key that you're going to immediately hit by accident. So good interface design is something that just takes time, honestly. It takes time and really good quality testing to really hone in on the perfect stuff. And I definitely wanted a responsive game as well. Like one of my goals with combat should be over quickly, because you don't want a long prolonged combat that takes forever, unless it's supposed to be a big nasty fight. Like ideally you want it so that you can one hit kill guys that are weaker than you, and maybe 1 or 2 hits on regular guys. And if you're taking 3 or 4 to 5 hits to kill a guy, you might have to consider you might have just entered an area that's dangerous.
Yeah. And it gives you that nice warning, like, this is taking a while. I'm doing it, but I don't feel safe.
Yeah. And some feedback, for example, one of the testers was like, it's so easy to get lost or get way far away. It'd be nice if we could have some way to zip back to the inn. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, I'm really trying not to copy Diablo here, but because they literally said I need a town scroll or a town portal. I was like, but no, he's right. I should do that. So I introduced the return spell, and then there's a touchstone in game that will do the same thing, and they're available at all the major item vendors. So.
Yeah, I used to be very much against that. I had the same thing, God, I don't want to do that. I don't want that in my game. And as an adult with a job and kids, I don't always have time to not do it. But you have a nice save anywhere, too, which is super handy. Does saving anywhere, really suck up memory for you, or did you handle that well?
I handled it pretty well. It essentially has a save game file that contains your characters and their content and stuff they've done and stuff they own. And then all of the data for the maps is stored in the mob copies of the mob files that are stored on your game disk. So when you save your game, it just saves back all that content, and it uses a raw sector save on the TI, which means it just goes basically copy back out all over the entire file, so that there's no. It doesn't try to do piecemeal work, because on an old disk system, that's a bad idea. It'll just run super slow. So.
I think I'm out of questions, Matt. Do you have anything left here?
No. I just got to say that it's a very, very impressive thing to boot this up for the first time and see the title screen and the intro, and it's just really a remarkable accomplishment, and we appreciate you sharing it, with us and talking to us.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
And I actually did not answer your question. You said, how long would it take to play? I initially didn't know, because the first tester to complete it didn't know. So I added a clock to the game. In an internal memory, it literally is counting up how many seconds, minutes, and hours you play the game. And so the second player to finish the game, who actually didn't get to everywhere, but he was definitely playing actively, it took him 191 hours.
Okay.
Wow.
I have no doubt that if someone knew where they were going and knew where everything was, they could cut that down quite a bit. But I am anxious to see who next maybe finishes the game. I do have a victory list up at the website, so I am really looking forward to hearing from someone so that I can make another post there.
I'm working on it. All right. Well, let's take a moment then. Thank you again. Remind everyone they can find this at your website for sale and at, what was that other site?
Arcade Shopper.
Arcade Shopper.
And I still have about 20 odd collector's editions that I will be looking to sell. I don't know how many more. I need this. I actually am now finally at the stage I'm going to start mailing them out. So, because I finally got all the components I need to do it. I was waiting for the cartridges.
That's got to be nerve-wracking.
Yes, it is. But yeah, I mean, basically get them while you can, because at some point I'd be like, I'm done with mailing these out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. All right. Well, thank you for coming on again. Maybe we'll hear from you in Realms of Antiquity 2 in 15 years.
Hopefully
before that. All right. Thank you again. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Big thank you to all of you watching, sharing, liking, subscribing, suggesting games, commenting on our videos, or supporting us on Patreon. We appreciate all of your support and look forward to sharing many more videos with you. Thank you again.